Self-esteem parenting 24. Teaching our children to take responsibility for their actions. My father, Zichrono Livracha, gave me another life lesson that I live by and I teach to my children. And it is, make no excuses. For example, a person may be apt to say, I'm sorry I was late to the meeting, but I got a phone call from overseas just as I was leaving and I couldn't make it on time. Or, I didn't clean up my room because I was too tired. Or, I didn't hand in the assignment on time because my little sister scribbled on it. Of course, there are mitigating circumstances. There are things that cause us to be frustrated and not achieve what we're supposed to achieve. But giving an excuse doesn't absolve us from culpability or responsibility for the mistake itself. It may absolve us from the consequence of the lateness or the mistake. Perhaps I don't get a consequence, but I'm still responsible for the fact that I didn't hand it in and I have to hand it in. I didn't clean up my room, but I got to clean up my room now. I didn't make it to the meeting, I better find out what happened at the meeting. I still have to take responsibility for my actions. Excuses are not good enough. And therefore, my father would say, admit your mistake, make no excuses, take responsibility for it, learn from it, and move on. And that's an important lesson that I've learned and I teach to my children. In the Tanakh, when Shmuel Hanavi asked Shaul HaMelech, King Saul, why he left the sheep of the Amalekites alive, Shaul answered and said, in Shmuel Aleph, chapter 15, verse 15, I have brought them from the Amalekite, for the people took pity on the best of the sheep and cattle in order to bring them as offerings to Hashem your God, but we have destroyed the remainder. It was not the mistake itself that Hashem was upset with. It was the lack of admission of responsibility for his mistake. He didn't admit his mistake, and that's why he lost the Malchus. He lost the kingship. Later, when King David was confronted by Shmuel Hanavi as to why he took Bathsheba too early after her divorce from Uriah Hittite. I'm not going to go into it now, but you can look it up in my book of how I explain the fact that David HaMelech was not sinning when he took Bathsheba. He did not commit adultery. Eino ela toya. It's not true that he committed adultery. It's just that he took her too early after her divorce, her real divorce from Uriah Hittite, and therefore it looked like he took a married woman, but he didn't, of course. But nevertheless, when he was told by Shmuel Hanavi that he made a mistake by taking her too early, he said, Chatasi Lashem, I sinned before God. And because of that, he retained his kingship, even though he made his mistake, even though he made that sin before God. So therefore, we have to admit our mistakes. And if we don't admit them, then we fail to take responsibility for them. We're going to cover them over. We're going to absolve ourselves, so to speak, from the mistake. We need to teach our children, when you make a mistake, have the self-esteem, the self-value to say, yeah, it doesn't define me. The mistake doesn't define me and say, well, I made a mistake, therefore I'm no good. But you are good, you are valuable, you have a wheel of strengths, you have intellectual strengths. Remember our wheel of strengths, social skills, personality, midos. You're spiritual, you have spirituality strengths. You're part of a family, you're growing, and you made a mistake. You are valuable, you are holy, you are kadosh, you are a good person, you're a valuable person. And yet you made a mistake. So therefore the mistake does not take away my value. And we have to teach our children that we're valuable and we made a mistake. Take responsibility from it, learn from it, and move on. In our parsha of Chukas, the story of the crucial Egel HaZahav and the Para Aduma, which atoned, the red heifer, which atoned for the Egel HaZahav, one cow, the red heifer, atones for another cow, the Chet HaEgel, the golden calf. The Alter Slobodka brings the Yalkut, who says the following. The Yalkut says, why are all sacrifices male, while the Para Aduma, the red heifer, is female? Says Rabbi Aibu, it is compared to the son of a servant who dirties the palace of the king. Let his mother come and clean up what the son made dirty. So too, says God, let the Para Aduma come to rectify the sin of the golden calf. The Para Aduma is a female. All other sacrifices are male. Why female? Because the Para Aduma, the idea of the female, is that the source of the problem. The source of the issue is the mother. The mother represents the source of the issue. And the golden calf was a mistake. And the source of the golden calf was rectified by virtue of the mother, a female para aduma. Why? The mistake of the Jewish people was that they did not pray to the golden calf. If you read it carefully in the parsha, it does not talk about praying to the golden calf. They danced in front of the golden calf, which represented power. They did not see Moshe Rabbeinu in 40 days. They knew that they pray only to God. God took them out of Egypt, split the sea, 10 plagues, brought them to Mount Sinai. Of course they believed in God and believed that they only pray to God and connect with God. However, they wanted to have a symbol of power. Moshe Rabbeinu, their leader, was gone and was missing for 40 days on the mountain, receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai. To them, hadn't seen him in 40 days. And therefore, they wanted a symbol of power, so they built something which had a symbol of power that they knew. The cow, the calf, the ram, was a symbol of power in Egypt, and therefore they represented that symbol of power with a golden calf. Comes along Hashem and says, the para aduma is the mother, the source. The mother source of that mistake is power. Take a red heifer, red represents the color of power, and recognize that we have to burn the ashes of the red heifer, burn this so-called power that you think is power, because I, Hashem, am power. I am the source of all power. I'm the source of all life. And therefore take the red heifer, which represents the source of the mistake of the golden calf, a female cow. The source of the mistake is that you were seeking power, but power comes in the color of red, and it's a red heifer, and it's a burnt up red heifer, in that the ashes are sprinkled on the person, and that restores him to spiritual purity from ritual impurity. And therefore, recognize the source of your mistake. That's what paraduma means. To go to the source, to go to the mother, the female of the mistake, the female source, the mother of the mistake, and rectify it. So too, when we find out that we perform a mistake or we do a mistake, what's the source of the mistake? Many times in our lives, the mistake is caused by low self-esteem. The mistake that we are unable to perform is because we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe that we can do something, so we give up. We give up too early. Or we fail to put in the right effort. Or we just give up on ourselves. The source of many mistakes, the mother of many mistakes that we make, is a lack of self-esteem. Our self-esteem comes from a sense of self. Our self comes from Hashem. Hashem is the source. He is the power. He is the one who has given us the strength to do something, to accomplish anything. And therefore, we recognize the chiluk elokam imal, the peace of God from above within ourselves, the godliness within ourselves, the godly strengths within ourselves, then that's the source of ourselves. That's the source of the self. Our self-esteem comes from our relationship with Hashem, that we got our self from Him, the source of all selves, the neshama, the neshamas. And if we have a relationship with God, then it's not a religious experience, it's a spiritual experience to know that I go to my source. Hashem has given me a self, He's given me abilities, He's given me strengths, and that's the source of my ability to perform in this world. And therefore, I don't make any excuses, because if I disconnect from God, then I say to myself, I have to reconnect with God. What does that mean? Reconnect with my own godliness, to reconnect with the godliness that God gave me. And that's restoring my power of self-esteem. So therefore, the story of paraduma, the inyan of paraduma, is to rectify the mistake, to admit my mistake. And oftentimes our mistake is, I don't believe in myself. And we have to teach our children to believe in themselves, that you are good, you are valuable. You made a mistake, that's okay. Admit it and move on. Grow, you have the power to grow, the power of free choice. Your power of free choice is never taken away from you. Even if I made a mistake, you still have the power of free choice to rectify that mistake. And therefore, we have to be able to teach our children that the source of our goodness is Hashem, that Hashem has given us the power to perform, to succeed, and He believes in us. And Emunah means, faith means that I believe in God who believes in me. Of course we believe in God. That's not what Emunah means. Emunah means, faith means, I'm faithful to the fact that I believe in the God who believes in me. And we tell it to our children. You believe in Hashem who believes in you. And that's why we can inspire our children with the relationship with Hashem that can give them the strength to say, I made a mistake, but I can go on. Make no excuses. Admit it, move on, because you have Hashem within you. He believes in you. Keep going.